The Vinesh Phogat issue, what no one else will tell you, if only you are interested. Welcome, Vanakkam, Vande Mataram. When a tragedy as heartbreaking, as massive as what has happened to Vinesh Phogat happens, we can turn that into some kind of political shuttlecock or media affair or mere talking point to fill our idle hours. Or, like responsible, mature people, we can also engage with what this very symbolic event tells us, even though from a distance. There are two ways of responding to what happens around us. One is in a passive mode, merely serving as receptacles to whatever happens all around us. The second is the active mode, in which we not only receive impressions from the external world, but also actively, meaningfully reflect on the meaning of these events, their significance. And that significance must be understood within an intellectual, moral, historical context. That's something that the contemporary world does not enable us to develop. It is something that each individual has to do for himself or herself. So, in this video, I'm going to analyze the Vinesh Phogat tragedy, something that has devastated this very dedicated and distinguished athlete, should make us aware of. First of all, in order to get to the real meaning of this tragedy, we have to consider it in terms of what it is. It is a sporting event. You might think that what I am stating is unnecessary because it is obvious. If you will continue to listen, you will realize that it is not so obvious to people today. It was obvious to people centuries ago, but over a period of time, we have lost contact with the original context of these festivals. They were called festivals. Why they were celebrated, what they signified to the society, and the changes that have come over these sports festivals over a long period of time, particularly the huge distortions that have invaded the realm of sports and games since the advent of technology. Now, the word technology is extremely important. I'm going to connect sports to technology and highlight an issue which nobody is talking about. Now, what is the significance of the sport of sports and games? Why do we attach so much importance to these events? Obviously, sporting events have symbolic significance. They symbolize the greatness of being human. Now, in this context, that greatness is to be revealed, illustrated, or manifested without having recourse to any mechanical or technological help. Now, this is very important for everyone to understand. To understand this, let's take a familiar example. Very stringent disciplinary action is taken against athletes who resort to performance enhancing drugs. Why is that so? Because if athletes are allowed to consume or take the help of performance enhancing drugs, they're actually not showing their own native capabilities, native strength, native speed, native athleticism. They're corrupting their native athleticism with something that is not native to them. something that is external to them, namely the drug. So this is a logic in taking a very stern stand against athletes using performance enhancing drugs to go beyond the existing limits of performance. For example, if athletes are allowed to freely use performance enhancing drugs, maybe an athlete will clear 100 meters in 8 seconds as against 9.56 now. But that cannot be credited to the athlete in case an athlete does so who has resorted to performance enhancing drugs. It must be credited to the special efficacy of the drug he has consumed. So from this illustration, I hope it's clear that the value of sports and games is that it continues to affirm the amazing capabilities of the human body, which again is not a completely true statement to make, because in sports it's not merely the body that's involved. I would, as a small time athlete of very poor distinction, I played sports and games only at the school levels. I can tell you, even at that low level, it's not merely the body that's involved, it's the mind and the soul that are also involved. So it is a complete human person performing at one's very best in order to keep people reminded that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Even though you have sporting events involving animals like horse race, even there it's not the horse that gets the credit, quite rightly. It is the jockey, the person who rides the horse. So we must understand that the true symbolic, cultural, even philosophical significance of sports and games is that it continues to affirm and celebrate the greatness of the human person. A great athlete is also a great human being. I've had occasions to interact with a few very outstanding athletes. I'm not talking about the piddling athletes who resort to all kinds of underhand means to achieve something, but people at the highest levels, they're also great human beings. This is changing, but let me not go into that traction now. Now, what has happened, particularly in the case of events like wrestling, boxing, etc. Now, you think of a fencer, the fencing episode where two athletes use equipment to fight. Now, unlike a fencer or an athlete who does fencing, a wrestler uses only her hand, her body, her legs, the physical aspect. No external equipment, no technology is involved. It's a pure person. It's a contact sport in which two human beings, without any technology, without any prop, without any extraneous element, are trying their skills against each other, and in performing at their absolute best, they provide a very unique experience to viewers all over the world, particularly in this world of communication technology where visuals go all over the globe in the fraction of a second. They are providing this kind of rare experience to viewers around the globe without the use of any technology, any external equipment. They are showing the beauty, the strength, the speed, the capabilities of the sheer human body, the poetry of the body. When you watch the wrestler performing at her best, it's poetry in motion. Wrestling was not my event. I've done some verbal wrestling, but physical wrestling I have not done. But I've watched all these things and I've tried to understand the underlying principles, and that's what I'm trying to share with you. Now, therefore, fix this idea very clearly in your mind that when a wrestler wrestles, he or she is performing or is allowed to perform only at the highest levels of his or her unaided physical capabilities, strength, speed, sense of the art, etc., etc. The art of wrestling. Now, what has happened is technology has invaded this realm. But for technology, this aberration of a higher weight category athlete competing in a lower weight category segment would not have arisen at all. Why does a wrestler need a nutritionist, a physio, a doctor who is specialized in sports medicine, so on and so forth? Because medical technology is now brought into wrestling. Now, an athlete, in many cases, athletes have to shed 1.5 to 2 kilograms of body weight overnight. Do you think it's possible? You try and shed 2 kilograms of your body weight in 1 month. You will see what struggle it takes, and the older you grow, the more difficult it gets. If you're younger, you can get rid of it. I remember in 1973, 74, going to Simla in summer, checking into a small hotel, depositing my luggage there in the morning, and then walking all through the day without food. And extreme, it was winter, so very severe conditions, walked and walked and walked. I went there actually to get rid of my weight. And in 3 days' time, I managed to get rid of 3 kilograms of body weight. If I were to do that today, I will die. When you're young, you can do. But getting rid of body weight to the extent of 1.5 to 2 kilograms, which is what athletes who are made to compete in lower weight category segments have to do. These things are unseen by the people, the viewers who derive the great pleasure of seeing these athletes perform. They do not know the agony and the torment that these athletes have to go through. In an event like gymnastics, hundreds and hundreds of gymnasts end up crippled because of serious accidents, and once they're crippled, nobody bothers about them. So there is a huge underbelly of suffering and injustice, atrocity in the world of sports and games. We only see the successful candidates, but for every successful candidate, there will be 1,000 unsuccessful candidates whose lives are ruined and who are neglected and forgotten by the society, abandoned to their own misery. No one cares for them, no one even remembers them. So what has happened is that because of this high competitiveness that has come into, and national prestige, glory, artificially injected into this, athletes with their their supporting team, they have to produce results for their country. Or even otherwise, even individual athletes, many of them hailing from poor economic background, if they have to ensure for themselves a fairly adequate circumstance of life for future years, they have to perform. They have to perform far above their capability. So they are actually driven to this kind of extremely unnatural, unhealthy, and often life-threatening processes. Now, for a moment, concentrate on what happened to Vinesh Phogat. As I said in the previous video, she was forced to fight in a category to which she did not belong. Her natural weight category was 53 kilograms. But since that slot was to be given to somebody else, and she was denied an opportunity to fight for that slot, she had to reluctantly accept the unfortunate consequence of having to fight in a low weight category, which meant that she had to shed weight. She has reduced her weight from 53 kilograms to 50 kilograms, actually below 50 kilograms. Because if you have checked your body weight regularly, you will see that if you check your body weight 3 times a day, morning, lunchtime, evening, you will find that your body weight varies quite substantially. In our case, the variation may be 200 grams to 500 grams per day in the course of the day. Next morning again, you may be back to the body weight you registered the previous morning. So there are variations. The human body registers variations in weight. Now, in the case of athletes, this variation is very dramatic. Now, in the case of Vinesh Phogat, she brought her weight down to 49.9 kilograms when she was weighed in on the previous day. So she was well within the upper limit prescribed. But mind you, that was not her natural weight. Her natural weight was 53 kilograms. But because she couldn't compete in her natural weight category, and because she was very keen to compete and contribute to the so-called national glory, she consented to come down to this level and tormented herself to the extent of bringing her body weight down in a very short span of time by nearly or a little over 3 kilograms. That in itself is traumatic. You do not know what an athlete has to go through in order to achieve this kind of weight reduction. All right, then she is all right as far as the first day's weighing in is concerned. On that day, she fights 3 bouts. 3 bouts. She fights 3 bouts. Can you imagine? This is Olympics. It is not some local gusti, local wrestling. It's at the highest levels. And all this while she has to do this, keeping in mind that she cannot let her body weight go beyond 50, which means that she cannot even drink water, leave alone eating food, because she is already at 49.9. Can you imagine? Her margin allowed is only 100 grams. But you imagine an athlete who fights 3 bouts on the same day. Thereafter, what's her condition? She would die if she does not drink water. She would die if she does not have nourishment. So she was allowed to eat. And when she ate, her body weight went up by 2.7 kilograms. These details are not very much in public knowledge. Her body weight went up by 2.7 kilograms. And then overnight, she has to bring her body weight down to 50 kilograms, which means that she has to shed 2.7 kilograms overnight. She was made to go through a lot of things, jumping, skipping, not, sleeping. Her hair was chopped. Everything was done. Even blood was drawn from her body. Can you imagine? Her blood was drawn in order to reduce her weight. Now, you tell me, after an athlete is subjected to this torment, do you think she can participate in an event and win the bout? And this bout is at the final level. An athlete who is subjected to this kind of diabolic, satanic, inhuman torment, she is not even allowed to sleep overnight. And on top of that, she is exercising through the night. She is not allowed to drink water. So that at the end of this, after weighing in, she had to be rushed to the hospital and treated for dehydration. She would have died. Now, there are people who blame her. So what I'm saying is that this sort of unsustainable levels of competition, this kind of human vanity that has come in, has ruined the original epic beauty of sporting events which was a celebration, it's a festival of the wonderful, amazing capacities of the human person, the human body. Body beautiful, as the Greeks used to say, poetry in motion. Now, that is now corrupted with technology, medical technology, by which the body weight of a wrestler, for example, can be played around with as other people decide. The athlete has no choice in this matter other than saying, I will not participate, I don't want to go through this torment. With that, her career ends. She becomes an abject slave of the system. She has no choice. And even if an athlete were to win an Olympics gold medal, I would say, if my daughter were to compete, I would say, don't accept this torment. Forget about gold medal. That's what I would say as a father. If you have a daughter and your daughter has to go through this kind of torment and actually hover between life and death for the sake of a medal, what would you choose? I have no doubt at all I would choose the life of my daughter and not the so-called elusive glory of a country. Because the country is not fair to her. The system is not fair to her. The system is actually playing with her life. Suppose in this process Vinesh Phogat has died. We would have talked about her for a day or two, then she would have been consigned to complete oblivion. No one would have remembered her thereafter. That's the end of it. She would have disappeared like a bubble. So what I want my viewers to understand is that in the world of sports and games, at the highest levels of competition, Olympics in particular, there is a very ugly underbelly of this kind of torment, atrocity systemically perpetrated on athletes who are exemplary in their dedication to their particular sports, exemplary in their sense of patriotism, exemplary in their commitment to the culture of excellence. And yet, the end result of all this for them individually is near-death experiences. And beyond that, through it all, many, like Vinesh Phogat, end up in utter heartbreak. I wonder how many years it would take her to recover from the trauma what she has had to go through. To have gone through all of this and then to be rejected at the last moment. I think that's the height of an atrocity. No higher atrocity, no worse atrocity can be perpetrated on a human being. It was this that made me say in my last video that perhaps the team should have considered Vinesh giving a walkover to her opponent at the finals so that she would be eligible for a silver medal. Now, one of my viewers, whom I greatly appreciate, very fond of him, feels that I committed an ethical atrocity or ethical impropriety in saying so, because it is deception. I respect the sentiment, but the point is, knowing particularly the condition of an athlete after she has been forced to go through this routine, knowing very well that she could not have competed thereafter. Suppose Vinesh Phogat had been cleared in the weighing in process and allowed to compete. She could not have competed. Why do I say so? Think of Antim Pankal, the girl to whom Vinesh Phogat lost the opportunity. She was preferred over Vinesh Phogat. Antim Pankal participated in the 53 kilogram category. She was number 3. She was the bronze medalist in the world wrestling competition. What happened to her? She lost in the first round. Why? Because Antim Pankal also had weight problems. She was subjected to the kind of inhuman process that I sort of briefly referred to of weight reduction. So much so, when she entered, the Gotha entered the ring for her event, she couldn't fight. She lost the fight virtually in one minute. She had no energy left. That's what happens to athletes once they're made to go through this cruel, inhuman procedure. So it's high time that we as human beings, realized that our athletes have to go through unthinkable personal torture and torment in order to satisfy our vanity. And many athletes end up seriously ruined. I sit and wonder what would happen to Vinesh Phogat for the rest of her life. First of all, the psychological trauma she has gone through is very, very, very hard to recover from. Secondly, even the physical torment. She's a woman. Maybe she wants to have a home. What will she be like as a mother? What is her body like? What is going to be the serious health consequences of all that has been done to her? These are questions we as human beings must ask. At any rate, I want to reiterate my conviction that sports and games are ceasing to be sports and games. They are becoming vanity games. It's becoming Olympics in vanity. If these are genuine sports and games events, then they should be conducted in a manner that leaves absolutely no margin whatsoever for the invasion of medical technology into the sanctum sanctorum of sports, the life of athletes, their health, their personal integrity, and their fundamental human right to be protected from physical torture and torment. It has to be a pure celebration of the human in terms of the poetry of the body, and not this kind of subhuman competition in which technology wins over the human person. And the most moving thing that Vinesh Phogat has done is to send a message to her mother saying, "Wrestling has won, I have lost." Now that's the one statement that made me think about all this. She has put it beautifully. She says, "Wrestling has won, I have lost." In other words, she's saying that wrestling as an athletic event, as it is understood, practiced, organized today, has become inimical to the health and happiness of individual athletes. The event is going away from the participating athletes. The event is becoming an end in itself, and athletes are becoming mere footnotes, mere cogs in the machine, as it were. The insignificance of the athlete, the utter indifference to the system, to the unspeakable agony of the individual athlete, which is the frontal contradiction of what a sporting event is meant to be, because a sporting event is meant to be a celebration of the human. So that's an aspect that I'm pretty sure nobody will talk about. To me, this is the heart of the matter, and I request you to think about it. And please, if you consider the insight I have shared with you worth your while, please share it with others. So take 5 minutes today, make a phone call and say, look, what about thinking of this event in this manner? Everybody is talking about it in this light and that light, this issue, that issue is becoming highly politicized. Now, that political issue for me is secondary. There is an element of politics in it, and I have dealt with it in the previous video, but that is not, as far as I am concerned, the foremost issue. The foremost issue is the utter corruption, the demonization of the sporting culture as a whole, which has various aspects, including the politicization of sports administration, to which I made a very perfunctory reference yesterday. But it's a huge issue, I see no reason why politicians who have had nothing to do with sports and games, sitting on top of sports administration, ruining everything. Now, if you want to ruin India's future in shooting events, get somebody like Brijbhushan Sharan Singh, appoint him as the president of the Indian Shooting Federation or something. He will do the job, a remarkable job. And the sporting culture of India, as far as shooting events are concerned, will be taken care of for the generations to come. Why should these politicians have a place at the top? What have they to do with it? How can they understand the plight of an athlete? How can they understand what it takes to create a culture of excellence in the practice of sports and games? What contributions can they make? Why are they there at all? Politicians have their own domain, they should play their games there. People who have distinguished themselves in sports and games, they should be allowed to run these events, which are highly specialized, highly sensitive, and it takes total dedication and highest levels of knowledge and commitment to take a particular event and its all various aspects of its organization forward. So unless and until we liberate, we protect sports from various aberrations, various invasions, various forms of colonization, and colonization always results in corruption, with very tragic, outrageous consequences for the athletes. Politicians do not suffer, they always stand to gain. As viewers, we remain ignorant about the tragedies that are happening all the time, the injustice that athletes have to undergo. For example, even think of the sexual harassment complaints made by 5 women wrestlers against the then president of the Indian Wrestling Federation. What happened to them? As a country, we are completely careless, insensitive to them. At the same time, we expect our wrestlers to bring gold medals to India. Now, what kind of nonsense is it? I mean, how much more stupid can we get? How much more insensitive? It doesn't become us. It doesn't put us in a good light to be in this kind of hypocrisy. Come on, wake up. Let's get real. If you say that you love the country, please bring that claim, that profession into action. Let our deeds match our words. Then we become authentic human beings. Otherwise, we are hypocrites. Our love for the country, our patriotism should not be a matter of hypocrisy. It must become genuine. I believe in patriotism if it is genuine. I don't believe in patriotism as some kind of alibi, excuse, play acting, hypocrisy, etc. Anyway, I think there are serious issues to be addressed, and I can only hope that the heartbreak, the tragedy of Vinesh Phogat would at least create some ripples in this country and force at least a few people to sit up and take note as to where we are headed. And in particular, mind the miserable conditions in which our athletes have to perform and bring honor and glory to their motherland. Jai Hind.